Nobody understood why a Delta Force colonel would drive 200 miles just to watch the program's worst performer take her final exam. Sergeant Emily Harper had been failing every drill for weeks, earning mockery from fellow soldiers and disappointment from instructors. Her military career was effectively over. But this colonel knew something they didn't. He knew that Emily wasn't failing because she couldn't perform. She was failing because she wasn't authorized to. And he was the only person alive who could give her that authorization. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what happens next will completely change how you think about hidden potential. The dust kicked up in small clouds as the transport vehicle rolled to a stop outside Fort Bragg Advanced Combat Training Center. Sergeant Emily Harper stepped down onto the cracked pavement, her right leg taking the impact with a barely noticeable hesitation that she'd learned to mask as deliberate movement. At 28, she possessed the kind of unremarkable appearance that military training had perfected over years of conditioning. Standard-issue fatigues, brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun, and dark green eyes that constantly cataloged exits and angles without seeming to notice anything at all. The administrative sergeant barely looked up from his paperwork as Emily approached the check-in desk. Her orders specified assignment to Advanced Combat Course Delta 7, a program designed for experienced soldiers seeking specialized tactical training. The course had a 30% graduation rate and a reputation for weeding out anyone who couldn't handle high-stress combat scenarios. Emily's bunk assignment placed her in the corner of a barracks that smelled like industrial cleaner and decades of military boots. She chose the bed with the best view of the entrance and exits, positioning her gear with the precision of someone who'd learned that organization could mean the difference between life and death. The evening meal brought her first real introduction to her fellow trainees. The dining facility buzzed with confident conversation typical of soldiers who'd earned their way into an elite program. Most were younger than Emily, with the easy swagger that came from successful careers and strong performance evaluations. Emily selected a table near the windows, arranging her meal tray with methodical care. 3 tables away, a group of soldiers had claimed the center of the dining area. Lieutenant Marcus Webb appeared to be their unofficial leader, possessing natural charisma that drew people into his orbit. His uniform was perfectly pressed, his confidence absolute, and his voice carried easily across the room. Sitting with Webb were 3 soldiers who seemed cut from similar cloth. Corporal Ryan Torres had the build of someone who lived in the gym, all visible muscle and aggressive posture. Specialist Jake Miller possessed sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, contributing observations that were clever enough to earn laughs but cruel enough to establish dominance. Private First Class David Chun appeared nervous around the others, but eager to prove himself worthy of their attention. As Emily walked past their table carrying her empty tray, the conversation momentarily paused. Webb's assessment was delivered loud enough for half the dining facility to hear, noting that some people earned their way into advanced programs while others seemed to arrive through administrative error or diversity initiatives. Emily's expression never changed as she continued toward the dishwashing station, but she filed away their faces and voices for future reference. In her experience, the soldiers who made the most noise about their capabilities were often the ones who'd never been truly tested under pressure. The first morning brought weapons qualification on Fort Bragg's primary rifle range. The course of fire was straightforward for anyone with advanced training. Precision shots at various distances, timed reloads, and target transitions that should have been automatic for experienced soldiers. Emily's first shot went wide of the bullseye by several inches. The miss was glaring enough to draw attention from nearby shooters and a disappointed shake of the head from the range instructor. Her reload, which should have been smooth and automatic, became a fumbling exercise in basic mechanics. Fingers that seemed uncertain about magazine placement, precious seconds lost while other shooters continued their courses of fire. When the ceasefire was called and targets were scored, Emily's performance placed her near the bottom of the class standings. The instructor's feedback was brief but pointed, suggesting she'd need significant improvement to meet minimum standards. Behind her, Webb's voice carried his assessment to anyone within earshot, wondering how someone with such poor fundamentals had qualified for advanced training. The urban combat course presented an even starker contrast between expectation and performance. Built from shipping containers and plywood barriers, The facility was designed to simulate the close-quarters fighting that had defined recent military operations. Moving through the kill house should have been natural for someone with Emily's experience, but when her turn came to run the course, every movement seemed forced and uncertain. Her first room clearance resulted in a paper target killing a cardboard hostage before she could engage. The buzzer sounded failure, and the instructor's voice cut through the air with sharp disappointment. Her second attempt was marginally better, but still resulted in simulated casualties that would have been unacceptable in real operations. The staging area after each exercise became a showcase for informal critique and social positioning. Webb and his group had claimed a corner where they could observe and comment on everyone else's performance while cleaning their weapons and reviewing scores. Torres made it clear that watching Emily's performance was painful, questioning how someone could struggle with basic room-clearing techniques. Miller added observations about the importance of standards and the danger of lowering expectations to accommodate people who clearly weren't ready for advanced training. Shin nodded along eagerly, desperate to maintain his standing within the group. Emily absorbed every comment while methodically cleaning her weapon and checking her equipment. Her expression remained neutral, but anyone watching closely might have noticed the slight tightening around her eyes or the way her hands moved with unconscious precision despite her apparent struggles on the course. Master Sergeant Rodriguez had been observing the social dynamics and performance issues with growing concern. As the senior instructor for the program, he'd seen hundreds of soldiers pass through advanced combat training, and Emily Harper presented a puzzle that didn't fit normal patterns. What Rodriguez found most interesting were the small contradictions in Emily's behavior. Her equipment was arranged with museum-quality precision. Her weapon maintenance was flawless. Her physical conditioning appeared excellent. Her knowledge of tactics and procedures was clearly extensive based on her written test scores. But when it came time to demonstrate practical application, she seemed to freeze up or second-guess herself into failure. During breaks between exercises, Rodriguez watched Emily move through the training facility with the kind of spatial awareness that indicated serious tactical background. She positioned herself to maintain clear views of entrances and exits. She ate her meals with the efficient methodology of someone who'd learned to consume calories quickly in uncertain environments. These weren't the habits of someone new to combat operations. They were the reflexes of someone who'd spent significant time in very dangerous places where complacency could be fatal. But if that was true, why was she performing so poorly during exercises that should have been routine for someone with her apparent background? The social dynamics continued to deteriorate as Emily's performance failed to improve. By the end of the first week, she'd acquired the nickname "dead weight" among some of the trainees. The term was used just quietly enough to maintain plausible deniability while ensuring she could hear it during equipment checks and meal times. Webb had become increasingly vocal about his concerns regarding program standards and the impact of weak performers on overall unit effectiveness. His observations were delivered with the kind of reasoned authority that made them difficult to challenge, even when their underlying message was clearly personal criticism disguised as professional concern. The breaking point came during the obstacle course, a physical challenge designed to test endurance, agility, and mental toughness under simulated combat conditions. The course included standard barriers like walls and rope climbs, but also incorporated stress inducers like smoke machines, strobe lights, and audio effects designed to replicate battlefield chaos. Emily started strong, clearing the initial obstacles with competent technique and reasonable speed. Her rope climbing was solid, her wall transitions were clean, and her low crawl under simulated wire obstacles showed proper form. For the first time since arriving at Fort Bragg, she appeared to be performing at the level her records suggested she was capable of achieving. Then came the flashbang simulator. The device was designed to replicate the disorienting effects of stun grenades used in close-quarters combat. When triggered, it produced a sharp thunderclap of sound accompanied by brilliant white light that penetrated closed eyelids and temporarily disrupted vision and hearing. When the simulator activated, Emily stopped moving entirely. Not a tactical pause or moment of reorientation, but complete motionless paralysis, as if someone had disconnected her from conscious control. Her breathing became rapid and shallow, her eyes fixed on something that existed only in her memory, seeing threats that belonged to a different time and place. The seconds stretched while other trainees completed the course and called out their finish times. Emily remained frozen in the middle of the obstacle, trapped in whatever flashback the sound had triggered. When the instructor finally called her name sharply enough to break through her dissociation, she blinked back to awareness and pushed forward, but the damage was done. Her final time placed her last among all participants, and everyone had witnessed the freeze that caused it. More importantly, they'd seen the kind of psychological reaction that raised questions about her fitness for combat operations. The barracks conversations that night carried a different tone than previous discussions, less mocking and more genuinely worried about what Emily's presence meant for program integrity and team safety. Webb's group was less subtle about their concerns, discussing the liability of soldiers who might freeze up during critical moments. Emily heard every word from her corner bunk, but her expression never changed as she turned toward the wall and closed her eyes. Whatever memories the flashbang had triggered were still playing behind her eyelids, but she'd learned long ago that showing weakness only invited more scrutiny and criticism. The second week brought team-based exercises designed to test leadership, communication, and trust under pressure. Complex scenarios where individual performance mattered less than group coordination and collective problem-solving. The exercises should have been an opportunity for Emily to demonstrate value through tactical knowledge and situational awareness. Instead, they became showcases for everything that appeared wrong with her performance. During multi-building urban assault exercises, her hesitations disrupted timing and coordination. Her reluctance to take point or make aggressive entries forced other team members into roles they weren't prepared for. Her constant checking of cleared areas and excessive caution about potential threats slowed operations beyond acceptable parameters. Webb's squad, which had been assigned Emily as a team member, grew increasingly frustrated with her impact on their performance scores. Their exercises were being marked down because of timing failures and coordination breakdowns that seemed directly attributable to her inability to operate at the speed and confidence level the scenarios demanded. Administrative wheels began turning as program leadership discussed Emily's future in the course. After 10 days of consistently poor performance and growing concerns about her psychological fitness for combat operations, the decision was made to recommend her for immediate dismissal from the program. Master Sergeant Rodriguez fought the decision as long as possible, arguing that Emily's background and potential warranted additional evaluation time. But the evidence was overwhelming and the other instructors were unified in their assessment. Whatever she'd been before arriving at Fort Bragg, she clearly wasn't capable of functioning at the level required for graduation. The notification came down on Tuesday morning. Emily had until Thursday to pass a comprehensive final evaluation or she'd be removed from the program with a recommendation for medical discharge based on combat stress reaction. Everyone understood it was essentially a formality since the test was designed for soldiers who'd been succeeding, not someone who'd been failing consistently for 2 weeks. Wednesday afternoon brought an unexpected change when a black sedan with government plates rolled through Fort Bragg's main gate. The vehicle proceeded directly to the training command building without stopping at normal checkpoints, indicating whoever was inside possessed credentials that bypassed standard security procedures. Colonel Jake Morrison emerged from the sedan with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to command authority. Tall and broad-shouldered with graying hair and weathered features, he carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of successful operations in hostile environments. Morrison proceeded directly to Master Sergeant Rodriguez's office, where he requested immediate access to Sergeant Emily Harper's training records and permission to observe her final evaluation. When Rodriguez expressed surprise at the request and explained Emily's poor performance throughout the program, Morrison's response was brief and uncompromising. He wasn't there to challenge their assessment or interfere with their procedures. He simply wanted to watch her run one more course. Across the training facility, Emily had gone completely still when she noticed the black sedan's arrival. She was standing near the equipment shed, ostensibly checking her rifle maintenance, but her attention was entirely focused on the conversation happening in the administrative building. Her posture had changed subtly, becoming more alert and focused in ways that suggested recognition rather than curiosity. Other trainees noticed the unusual visitor and began speculating about his presence and purpose. Webb's group was particularly interested in understanding why a senior officer would arrive unannounced to observe what everyone knew was essentially a formality before Emily's dismissal. Thursday morning arrived with oppressive heat that made even simple movements feel exhausting. The final evaluation was scheduled to take place on Fort Bragg's most challenging urban combat course, a complex facility designed to test every aspect of tactical training under maximum stress conditions. Colonel Morrison positioned himself at the edge of the training area, hands clasped behind his back as he observed the pre-exercise briefings and equipment checks. He didn't introduce himself to Emily or acknowledge her presence in any way, maintaining professional distance that suggested official observation rather than personal interest. Emily's team for the final evaluation included Webb, Torres, Miller, and Chun, the same group that had been most vocal about her deficiencies throughout the program. Their assignment seemed almost deliberately designed to create maximum pressure and minimum support for someone already struggling with confidence and performance issues. As the team prepared for entry into the kill house complex, Emily fell into her established pattern of hesitation and overcaution. Her equipment checks were thorough to the point of delay. Her positioning during the approach was conservative enough to slow the team's movement. Her communication was minimal and uncertain. They breached the first building according to standard protocols, with Emily assigned to the rear security position where her hesitations would theoretically have less impact on overall team performance. But even in a supporting role, her cautious movement and excessive checking of cleared areas disrupted the team's rhythm and timing. The first hostile engagement went poorly due to coordination breakdowns that seemed directly attributable to Emily's positioning and communication failures. Torres took a simulated hit because Emily's warning about a flanking threat came too late to be useful. As they moved deeper into the complex, Emily's performance continued to follow established patterns. Hesitation at doorways, overcaution at corners, and movements that seemed designed to avoid rather than engage potential threats. To everyone watching, it appeared to be the same story playing out for the final time before her inevitable dismissal. But Colonel Morrison was watching something different. His trained eye tracked Emily's positioning and movement patterns, noting details that escaped casual observation. Her hesitations weren't random or fear-based. They followed specific protocols that suggested deeper programming. Her equipment handling was flawless despite her apparent uncertainty. Her spatial awareness was actually exceptional, even if she wasn't acting on the information she was clearly processing. They were midway through the complex when Morrison made his decision. He stepped forward until he was clearly visible to all participants and instructors, then spoke in a voice that carried absolute authority across the training area. Emily, silent strike authorized. Execute. The transformation was immediate and absolute. One moment, Emily was the hesitant soldier who'd been failing exercises for 2 weeks. The next, she was something entirely different, something dangerous and precise, and utterly in control of the situation. Her rifle snapped to her shoulder as she flowed past Webb, already acquiring targets that hadn't yet appeared. When the first hostile actor emerged from concealment, she was ready with controlled pairs to center mass before the target could complete its mechanical presentation. Her movement through the building became fluid and inevitable, like watching water flow downhill while carrying unstoppable force. The technical precision was breathtaking. Rifle transitions from strong side to support side to navigate tight corners. Tactical reloads executed without breaking stride or losing situational awareness. Target transitions so smooth they appeared choreographed, but were actually the result of training that had burned proper technique into muscle memory. But it was more than technical skill. This was someone who understood violence at a fundamental level, who could read the geometry of a firefight and position herself exactly where she needed to be before threats materialized. She anticipated hostile positions based on architectural features and tactical logic. Webb and his team found themselves following in her wake, struggling to keep pace with someone who was operating on a completely different level. What had been planned as a 30-minute exercise became a 12-minute demonstration of tactical excellence. Clean, professional, and utterly decisive. When they reached the final hostage room, Emily didn't pause at the threshold to assess the situation. She read the geometry instantly, identified hostile positions through tactical analysis rather than visual confirmation, calculated angles and timing, and executed a solution that eliminated all threats before anyone could react. The exercise terminated with the success tone, indicating mission accomplished. But more significant than the successful completion was the complete transformation everyone had witnessed. The broken soldier who'd been failing basic drills had become something that belonged in textbooks about tactical excellence. In the staging area, instructors stared at their stopwatches and evaluation sheets in disbelief. Webb pulled off his helmet with shaking hands, eyes wide with confusion and something approaching fear. Miller and Torres appeared equally shaken by what they'd witnessed, trying to process how someone they'd been mocking for 2 weeks had just demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything they'd seen in their military careers. Emily was already conducting post-exercise weapons maintenance with the same methodical precision she'd applied to everything else. The dangerous operator who'd just dominated the course was gone, replaced by the quiet woman who'd been accepting criticism and mockery for 2 weeks. Colonel Morrison approached the staging area with the same measured pace he'd maintained throughout the exercise. No celebration or self-satisfaction, just the quiet recognition of someone who'd seen exactly what he'd expected to see. The debriefing session was conducted in a secured room away from other trainees and most instructors. Only Rodriguez, Morrison, and Emily were present for a conversation that would determine her immediate future and potentially explain the contradiction between her recent performance and the capabilities she'd just demonstrated. Morrison's explanation was carefully measured, revealing only what was necessary for Rodriguez to understand the situation without compromising classified information. Emily had been part of a specialized program that required very specific psychological conditioning. Operators learned to compartmentalize their capabilities, suppressing certain responses until they received proper authorization codes. The conditioning served as a safety measure, preventing operators from accessing dangerous skills during routine activities or civilian interactions. Without the proper trigger phrase, personnel appeared to function as normal soldiers with standard limitations. With authorization, they became what their specialized training had prepared them to be. Rodriguez listened with growing understanding as Morrison explained the psychological architecture behind Emily's apparent failures. She hadn't been acting or pretending incompetence. The conditioning created genuine limitations that could only be overcome through specific authorization protocols. Emily's medical rotation and transfer to conventional training had been part of an evaluation process to determine whether she could function in regular military units after completing her specialized service. Morrison's presence at Fort Bragg represented the final phase of that evaluation. The course record would remain on the board for the duration of the program, a reminder that appearances could be devastatingly deceptive. Emily's name at the top of the leaderboard in clean block letters, her time untouched despite multiple attempts by increasingly motivated trainees. The dismissal paperwork vanished from her file within hours of Morrison's visit. In its place appeared new orders assigning her to the Special Operations Training Command as an advanced tactical instructor. Not a lateral move or face-saving assignment, but recognition of capabilities that few people were qualified to teach. Webb and his group became notably subdued after witnessing Emily's authorized performance. The easy mockery and casual harassment stopped entirely, replaced by uncomfortable awareness that they'd been targeting someone whose actual capabilities exceeded their understanding. Chen attempted an apology several days later, catching Emily outside the dining facility to express regret about the group's treatment. Emily's response was brief and professional, noting that most people didn't understand what they couldn't see and that assumptions were natural when information was limited. Colonel Morrison departed Fort Bragg the morning after Emily's authorized demonstration, offering brief handshakes to Rodriguez and Emily before returning to whatever official duties had brought him to observe the evaluation. No extended explanations or dramatic speeches, just the quiet professionalism of people who understood that some operations were meant to remain classified. The remainder of the program continued with Emily participating as a normal trainee, demonstrating solid professional competence without the explosive capabilities she'd shown during the authorized exercise. Her performance was consistently good without being remarkable, giving no indication that she possessed skills that exceeded standard military training. On graduation day, she stood in formation with the rest of her class, receiving orders and preparing for her next assignment like any other soldier completing advanced training. But those who'd witnessed her transformation carried that knowledge forward, understanding that they'd encountered something rare and dangerous disguised as ordinary military personnel. Emily's assignment to the Special Operations Training Command proved to be exactly what Morrison had predicted. She requested and received duties that involved curriculum development and instructor training rather than direct operational deployment. Her expertise was applied to improving training methods and developing more effective evaluation protocols. Years later, her influence could be seen in training programs across multiple military branches and allied nations. Techniques she'd refined through classified operations became standard instruction for special operations personnel. Her understanding of psychological conditioning and performance optimization influenced how military trainers approached student assessment and capability development. Students who might have been dismissed for poor initial performance received additional assessment and specialized attention. Instructors learned to recognize signs of suppressed capabilities and psychological barriers that might prevent students from demonstrating their actual potential. Emily Harper had done more than survive a difficult evaluation period. She'd transformed how the military understood the relationship between performance and potential, ensuring that future operators with similar backgrounds would be recognized and developed rather than dismissed and discarded. If you've watched this entire story, you understand that Emily Harper's experience represents something much larger than one soldier's struggle with a training program. You've witnessed how easily we dismiss people who don't fit our expectations, how quickly we judge capabilities based on limited observation, and how dangerous our assumptions can become when we're dealing with people whose true nature is hidden beneath careful conditioning. Emily endured 2 weeks of mockery, harassment, and professional dismissal because the people around her couldn't see past her apparent failures to recognize the exceptional capabilities she was trained to conceal. Her story raises uncomfortable questions about how many times we've made similar mistakes in our own lives, how many exceptional people we've underestimated because they didn't present themselves in ways we expected. Think about the colleagues you've dismissed, the classmates you've overlooked, the people you've judged based on first impressions or surface performance. How many of them might have possessed capabilities you never imagined? How many opportunities for learning and growth have you missed because you couldn't see past your own biases and assumptions? If this story changed how you think about the people around you, if it made you question your own assumptions about capability and potential, if it reminded you that the most dangerous operators are often the ones you'd never suspect, then subscribe to this channel. Because these stories matter. These lessons have the power to change not just how we see others, but how we treat them and how we evaluate our own potential. Subscribe because Emily Harper represents thousands of quiet professionals whose stories deserve to be told, whose sacrifices should be acknowledged, and whose capabilities should inspire us to look deeper than surface appearances when evaluating the people we encounter every day.